Good evening. Tonight, retired NYPD Detective Shiela Geathers returns to News 8 with one of the most psychologically disturbing homicide investigations of her career. Two people were found executed in Central Park after midnight, both shot in the head at close range, their bodies carefully arranged beside a handwritten note that appeared to justify the murders. No witnesses, no screams, no robbery. Just blood, silence, and a killer calm enough to remain beside the bodies after death. Detective, tell the audience what you walked into that night.
The woman's face was partially destroyed when I arrived. The bullet entered beside her eye and exited through the back of her skull with enough force to spray blood, tissue, and fragments of bone across the pavement behind her. The man lying beside her had a contact wound burned into the side of his head. The muzzle had been pressed so close to his skin that the heat blackened the flesh around the entry point before the round tore through his skull and dropped him where he stood. There was blood underneath both bodies, blood on the grass, blood splashed onto nearby stone, but almost no signs of movement after the shots. That was the first thing that bothered me. They had not died struggling. They had died controlled. Their bodies were positioned unnaturally. The man's arm had been placed across his chest after death. The woman's legs had been shifted. Whoever killed them spent time beside the bodies after the shooting was over. That detail matters because panic leaves scenes unfinished. Panic runs, panic forgets things. This killer stayed in the darkness with two fresh corpses and arranged them like part of a display. That changes the emotional temperature of a homicide immediately. Then we found the note. They were doing naughty things. That was the exact wording. The paper was folded neatly and placed beside the woman's arm where it could not be missed. Underneath the sentence was a handwritten Bible verse we deliberately withheld from the public because the wording told me something immediately. The killer wanted the murders interpreted a specific way. He wanted morality attached to the blood. He wanted judgment attached to the scene. That is what made the note dangerous. Not because it sounded threatening, because it sounded deliberate. The victims were identified within hours. Both were married to other people. Both had been secretly involved in an affair for months. Burner phones, hidden meetings, quiet hotel visits. The deeper we pushed into their lives, the more the scene began trying to explain itself to us. Affairs, jealousy, shame, punishment. Every easy answer arrived quickly because the killer had carefully built the murders to point us in that direction. That bothered me immediately. Real rage is messy. Real revenge usually leaks emotion into the scene. Broken furniture, overkill, panic, something human. But this felt constructed, tight, controlled. Every detail seemed designed to direct our attention exactly where the killer wanted it. That was what made the park feel wrong. The silence around the bodies was almost worse than the blood itself. No witnesses heard screaming. No one reported a struggle. The victims were likely approached calmly, controlled quickly, and shot before either fully understood what was happening. The medical examiner confirmed both rounds were fired from close range. Powder burns covered the skin around the wounds. Tight trajectories, clean placement, efficient killing. The woman likely died second. Blood transfer on her sleeve showed she rolled partially toward the man after he was shot. That means she saw him die before the gun turned toward her. That detail stayed with me. She had enough time to understand she was next.
So now the note suggests punishment. The victim's affair seems to support the killer's message, and the scene itself almost appears designed to explain the murders for you. Detective, did you believe from the beginning this was some kind of morality killing?
No. I believe somebody wanted us to believe that. There is a difference. The note was too clean, too intentional. The wording felt staged. They were doing naughty things sounded childish on purpose, almost harmless if separated from the blood around it. But beside two bodies with their heads blown open, the sentence changed shape completely. It became justification, permission, a way for the killer to transform murder into correction. That is what I distrusted. We started with the obvious suspects because every homicide investigation has to. The woman's husband became important immediately. He knew about the affair. Friends described him as increasingly unstable in the months before the murders. We uncovered angry messages, arguments, accusations, and threats. Financial problems inside the marriage deepened the pressure around him. On paper, he fit almost perfectly. For a short time, the case wanted him badly. That is the danger with scenes like this. The obvious suspect arrives quickly enough to feel comforting, but there was something about him that never matched the part. He was emotional, loud, volatile. The killer in the park was cold, methodical, quiet. Those are different kinds of violence. Then we uncovered another possible suspect tied to the male victim, a former co-worker with a violent arrest history who recently accused him of stealing money from a business account. He owned firearms. He knew the victim's schedule. Witnesses described him threatening the victim weeks earlier during a heated confrontation. Suddenly, we had another man with motive, access, and anger, strong enough to make the murders believable. And again, the case tried to pull us toward him. That is how false certainty works in homicide. It arrives looking like relief. But neither suspect solved the most disturbing detail in the park: the calm. The killer had remained beside two fresh bodies long enough to position them, leave a note, and walk away without panic. That requires a level of emotional control deeper than ordinary rage. Men who explode in anger usually leave pieces of themselves behind. This killer left structure. That was what frightened me. Not the violence, the discipline. Because disciplined killers learn from successful murders, and successful murders usually become repeated murders. The deeper we dug, the darker the victims' private lives became. Hidden meetings, lies to spouses, secret phone records. The affair became the emotional center of the case, publicly, exactly as the killer intended. Reporters focused on scandal. People argued online about morality instead of murder. The note was working exactly the way it was supposed to. It was redirecting outrage. And while everyone looked at shame, I kept looking at control. That was the detail that would not leave me alone. The killer approached without fear, shot cleanly, stayed calmly, left quietly. No wasted movement, no emotional collapse, no visible mistake. That combination is rare. And when you see it early in an investigation, it creates a terrible feeling in the pit of your stomach because you begin understanding something before you can prove it. This was not practice. This was familiarity.
So if the note was camouflage and the affair was simply bait for the investigation, what frightened you most when you finally left that park, Detective? What made you believe the killings were not over?
What frightened me most was how complete the scene felt. Nothing interrupted him. No witness startled him. No panic rushed him. No mistake broke his rhythm. He killed two people, arranged their bodies, left a note, and disappeared into the city without leaving behind anything emotional enough to explain him. That kind of control does not suddenly appear inside a man for one night. It grows. And standing beside those bodies, with blood drying into the ground beneath them, I realized something else that stayed with me long after we left Central Park. The killer had not looked frightened while committing murder. He had looked comfortable. And 3 nights later, another couple proved just how comfortable he really was.
Thank you for watching this episode of The Case Files of Detective Shiela Geathers. We invite you to return and watch the rest of this exciting story when we return later this week with another episode. Have a great evening.